They called me into the downtown Chicago headquarters like it was just another meeting. Clean glass walls, polished floors, all that sleek, modern crap they love these days. I'd been expecting a budget discussion, maybe another rollout proposal. Instead, I walked into a cold room with a young HR rep I'd never seen before and Amelia Carter, the new CEO who still smelled like business school. She smiled like it was a formality. "Alan, thanks for coming in." My stomach turned. Something about her tone. Too calm. Too rehearsed. I nodded, took a seat across the chrome table. "What's going on?" She didn't waste time. "We're restructuring the leadership model at Hearthstone Kitchens, moving toward a more scalable, tech-driven environment." I blinked. "And what does that mean for me?" A pause. "Then, your approach, while effective for a time, doesn't align with where we're headed. We're looking at automated prep stations, AI-optimized ordering, and uniform delivery systems across all branches. The traditional kitchen leadership model just isn't sustainable anymore." I stared at her. 18 years. I built the Midwest branch from scratch. I'd started out hauling crates from local farmers, hiring chefs straight out of community kitchens. No apps. No tablets. Just real food and real people. "You're firing me," I said. She shifted in her chair, like the word made her uncomfortable. "We're offering a severance package. Generous, given your tenure. And full retirement contributions." I kept my face still. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. "So this is it." Her voice softened, like that would help. "The company appreciates your years of service, Alan. Truly. But our vision now is about the future of food. Automated culinary experiences, touchless kitchens, algorithm-based menus. It's what the market demands." I looked around the room. Cold. Impersonal. Like the decision had been made weeks ago, and they were just now getting around to letting me know. I stood slowly, the chair legs scraping across the floor. "I remember when this company was about people." Her smile didn't falter. "It still is. In a different way." Bullshit. I walked out without another word. Didn't slam the door. Didn't ask questions. Didn't cry. But God, did it burn. I got into my car, sat there with my hands on the wheel. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably the HR rep emailing a PDF full of legalese. I didn't look. Instead, I stared out the windshield and thought about how it started. One firehouse-turned-restaurant, a $90,000 personal loan, and a team of misfits who believed in feeding people with heart. Now, they wanted screens on every table and robots dropping off aioli. I wasn't just being let go. I was being erased. My philosophy, relationships, community, handmade quality, had been reduced to a liability. The worst part? I didn't even fight it. Not because I agreed. Because I knew they'd already replaced me. With someone younger, cheaper, and just tech-savvy enough to type sous vide into a scheduling algorithm. I drove home in silence, the city buzzing around me. The lights, the movement, the noise. All of it going on like I hadn't just been cut loose from the only life I'd known. I didn't stop at the office. Didn't grab my knives or the old photo of our first team. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me pack. I'd walked out like a ghost. Like I was already gone. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table. Same place I'd signed the first supplier contracts. Same table where I'd drafted menus by hand. Worked late into the night, dreaming of expansion. Now, all that work was obsolete. Made irrelevant by a quarterly projection and a woman who'd never cooked a single meal with her hands. My phone buzzed again. I flipped it over. No name. Just a number from corporate. I let it ring. Then I powered it off. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I had no meetings, no prep list, no team. Just me, a cold cup of coffee, and 18 years of memories that suddenly didn't matter anymore. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. They thought I'd go quietly. They were half right. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, thinking about the beginning, before the titles, the awards, the press. Before they started calling me Chef Alan, with that tone like it meant something corporate. Back when it was just me and a beat-up Chevy truck driving across the Midwest with a cooler full of dry-aged steaks and a box of hand-thrown ceramic plates in the passenger seat. I remember the day I walked away from the hotel job. I'd been the executive chef at a high-end chain. One of those places with perfect white tablecloths and $25 desserts made from pre-cut pastry sheets. They treated food like branding. The customers wanted consistency, not soul. It paid well. Came with stock options, a condo in Dallas, and a team that did whatever I said without asking why. And I hated every second of it. So when Hearthstone Kitchens was just an idea, a 3-person group with a vague vision about regional connection and family-first food, I jumped. I left a 6-figure salary and a staff of 45 to be employee number 4 at a company with no headquarters and no customers. I remember sitting on an upside-down paint bucket in an empty commercial space in Madison, staring at blueprints while the future COO, tried to convince me this was going to be a revolution. We're going to bring back real food, he said. None of this frozen, reheated crap. Farm to table, Alan. Community-sourced. Human-centered. It sounded like a dream, and I was stupid enough to believe in it. For the first few years, I didn't cook so much as chase. I drove across Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan, trying to find suppliers who hadn't already been gobbled up by big distributors. I hosted farmers' dinners in open barns with no electricity. I stood in rainstorms flipping grass-fed burgers while a bluegrass band played in the mud and diners ate off mismatched china. And it worked. Slowly, piece by piece, we built something people actually wanted to be part of. I recruited bakers who ran 20-year-old sourdough starters out of tiny storefronts in Racine. I convinced a goat cheese maker in Iowa to scale up her operation just so we could serve her product in all 5 of our locations. I trained cooks who didn't know how to julienne a carrot but cared enough to stay late and scrub stock pots by hand. We didn't have apps. We didn't need tech stacks or inventory algorithms. If we were low on tomatoes, I called Luis, and Luis called his cousin who had a truck. It was chaos, but it was ours. By year 6, the Midwest branch was outperforming every other region. We had the highest growth rate, the lowest turnover, and the only location with a wait list on a Tuesday night. And we did it all without loyalty points or data-driven menu curation. People came because it felt different. We didn't just serve meals. We told stories. Every plate had a name behind it. Someone who raised the chicken, milled the flour, shaped the ravioli. Our staff knew those names. They shook hands with those people at harvest festivals, shared beers at supplier picnics. It was personal. And Hearthstone, they loved us. They used us in every pitch deck, every boardroom brag. Look what Alan's team did in Madison, they'd say, like it was magic. It wasn't magic. It was work, relationships, trust, time. Now, all of that, the farmer calls, the handwritten menu notes, the yearly thank you pig roasts, was apparently outdated. Too slow. Too analog. Amelia Carter, with her bright smile and tablet stylus, called it inefficient. Said we needed a more scalable network of autonomous culinary centers. Funny how that works. One year you're the poster child for the future of dining. The next, you're a cautionary tale of nostalgia. But I don't regret it. I built something real, something honest. And no shiny screen or smart fryer can replicate what we had in those first years. They can keep their touchscreens and ghost kitchens. I'll keep the memory of that rainy barn dinner in Iowa, where 60 strangers passed around a cast iron pan of roasted carrots like it was a family heirloom. And for one perfect night, it felt like food meant something again. The day after I was let go, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. It started with Rick from the dairy co-op. Alan, please tell me this is a mistake. His voice cracked through the voicemail. We just got an email. They said they're cutting our contract. After 15 years. Then Margie, the baker who supplied our rye loaves every Thursday like clockwork. They want QR codes and barcode tracking. I told them I use a pencil and paper. They said that wasn't compatible with the new system. What the hell is going on? It kept going. Local butchers. Artisanal cheesemakers. A woman from Minnesota who ran a small greenhouse and handpicked her herbs. People I'd built this network with, people who trusted me. They were all calling because something was happening. Something bad. And I wasn't there to fix it. I didn't respond at first. Just sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone as it buzzed across the counter like a dying insect. Every call made my stomach twist tighter. Then I saw Mia's name light up. I hesitated before answering. Mia had been my sous chef, my protege, my right hand. She started fresh out of culinary school, quiet, observant, serious. I taught her how to run the line, how to manage payroll without losing her soul, how to look a supplier in the eye and say, no shortcuts. She never called me during off hours unless something was wrong. When I answered, she didn't say hello. They're gutting it, she said. Everything. The Tuesday farmer deliveries, the from-scratch sauce rotation, the pre-dawn bread shipments. Gone. They installed tablet stations in the prep area yesterday. The new efficiency model. I rubbed my forehead. So it's real. Real and fast. Suppliers are livid. Some walked out already. They asked me to retrain the team on the new kitchen automation protocols. She paused. I told them no. My chest tightened. You okay? No. But I'm staying for now. Just to keep people from walking into the fire. But it's bad, Alan. The soul's gone. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. Thanks for telling me. People are pissed, Alan. They keep asking where you went. What happened? I don't even know what to say. I didn't either. Not really. After we hung up, I just sat there, the silence in the room thick and heavy. Then I opened my laptop, not to check emails, not to respond to corporate junk, but to look through old photos. I pulled up a folder labeled Early Years. There it was. A shot of the first community dinner we ever hosted. Folding tables lined up under string lights in a school gym. Guests sharing roast chicken and sweet potatoes on paper plates. I remember walking around with a towel over my shoulder, refilling water jugs, and cracking jokes with a retired firefighter who had never tried kale before. That was Hearthstone to me. And now? It was barcode scanners and AI menus that changed based on profit margins. I knew this would happen eventually. Deep down, I'd seen the signs, the shiny rebrands, the new hires with titles like culinary systems strategist. But I still thought I had time. Time to adapt. Time to protect what we built. Turns out, I was just in the way. I stared at the phone again, still lighting up with new messages. I didn't feel angry. Not exactly. It was something worse. I felt grieved. Like someone had died. Because in a way, something had. The whole damn point. The thing we built. The model that said maybe, just maybe, relationships mattered more than profit per minute. And now it was gone. I stood up and looked out the window. Late spring. The trees had just started to green again. The streets were quiet. Somewhere, not far off, the first food trucks were probably setting up for the Saturday market. That's when the irony hit me. The thing they called outdated? It was the reason we succeeded. The slow calls. The personal handoffs. The how's your daughter doing? Before any deal got made. We were never about efficiency. We were about trust. And they threw it all away like spoiled stock. My hands curled into fists at my sides. Not out of rage, but clarity. They thought I was an obstacle. But maybe I was the only thing keeping the whole damn thing from falling apart. And if they didn't want that anymore, fine. Maybe it was time to build something new. Not out of bitterness, but from what they clearly never understood in the first place. People. Real people. Not numbers on a screen. A few days later, I found myself sitting across from Marty Lawson, my attorney of over a decade, in his cramped office above a dentist's office in downtown Madison. His place hadn't changed since the early 2000s. Same leather couch with the cracked cushions, same ticking wall clock that always ran 2 minutes slow. Marty was old school, just like me, and I trusted him more than anyone when it came to navigating paperwork that could bite you in the ass later. He handed me a cup of lukewarm coffee. So, he said, settling into the seat across from me. They booted you. I nodded. 18 years. No warning. Just gone. He leaned back, lips pressed together, thinking. They made you sign anything on the way out. I pulled the envelope from my coat and dropped it on his desk. Non-compete clause. Confidentiality agreement. Severance offer. He flipped through the documents, humming to himself. They tossed the whole boilerplate at you. I figured as much, I muttered. But it felt aggressive. Marty nodded. It usually is when a company wants to bury someone quietly. Let me take a look. He skimmed the non-compete first, his brow furrowing. Okay, so, they're saying you can't work in a competing capacity within a 200-mile radius for 18 months. Standard nonsense. Is it enforceable? Marty smirked. Here's the thing. It's enforceable if you play scared. But this clause is sloppy. Vague language, inconsistent terms. And they forgot to define competing capacity clearly. I've seen stricter ones tossed out in arbitration. So I can start something new? With a few caveats. Don't use their proprietary branding. Don't poach their suppliers outright. But if you want to consult, teach, even open a new concept, that's all fair game. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I'm not looking to steal anything, I said. I don't want what we built to vanish. There's too much good in it. Too many people who made this real. Marty gave a slow nod. Then don't go back into battle. Stay off their radar. Build your own damn thing, but do it smart. I stared at the window behind him, where a faded sticker said, Lawson and Sons, even though he never had sons. The sunlight caught the dust in the air, and for a moment I imagined something else, a kitchen not owned by shareholders, a network built by chefs and bakers and farmers who gave a damn, not algorithms. You ever hear of a co-op kitchen model? I asked. Marty raised an eyebrow. Like a food co-op? Kind of. But bigger. Like, what if instead of trying to outmarket Hearthstone, I created something completely different? A collective. Independent operators, working together. Sharing resources. Preserving the old ways, but without all the red tape. Marty leaned forward, fingers tapping against his mug. Go on. No corporate nonsense. No stockholder meetings. Just real people who want to feed their communities the right way. We use word of mouth, local connections, hands-on mentorship. Maybe I don't run a restaurant anymore. Maybe I teach, consult, build infrastructure. He was quiet for a long time, then said, You thinking of calling this thing anything? The name had come to me earlier that morning, while I was brewing coffee and watching a sparrow pick crumbs off the back deck. Heritage Culinary Collective. Marty grinned. Now that sounds like something with a backbone. I want it to mean something, I said, more to myself than to him. Not just another pop-up brand trying to sell nostalgia. I want it to be the alternative. He pushed his chair back and stood, reaching into a filing cabinet. Then let's get you registered. By the time I left Marty's office, the paperwork was in motion. Heritage Culinary Collective would exist on paper within the week. No big announcement. No flashy press release. Just quiet movement. I walked out into the afternoon light, coat sipped halfway, wind biting at my face. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel discarded. I felt ready. I wouldn't try to get even. I wouldn't try to reclaim what was already poisoned. I'd build something better, not to fight them, but to remind the world what food used to mean. And could mean again. Not profit. Not speed. But heritage. The following week, I filed the paperwork and officially registered Heritage Culinary Collective as a consulting LLC. It wasn't flashy. No launch party. No press coverage. Just a P.O. box in Verona, Wisconsin, a clean domain name, and a logo I paid a friend's kid $50 to design, a chef's knife crossed with a pitchfork, encircled by wheat. It felt right. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell anyone outside of Marty and Mia. I just wanted a foundation in place, something real, even if it was just a few documents and a website that said coming soon. But word traveled anyway. First, it was Chef Danny out of Appleton. She ran a neighborhood bakery that used to supply Hearthstone cinnamon rolls before the company replaced her with a frozen supplier from Arizona. She called me early one morning. "Alan, I heard a whisper you're doing something new." I was standing in the backyard with a coffee in one hand and the phone in the other. "Maybe. I'm feeling it out." She didn't miss a beat. "I'm in. Whatever it is, I'm in." They cut my contract with 3 days' notice. Been trying to keep the lights on ever since. 2 hours later, I got a message from Saul, a chef I'd helped train back in 2012. "You still believe in scratch kitchens? Because I've got a group of us down here in Peoria ready to jump ship if you're building something." And just like that, it began. Old friends. Burned-out partners. Even a couple of former competitors reached out, people I'd clashed with at food expos or sat across from in sourcing negotiations. Now, suddenly, they were saying the same thing. Enough with the tech circus. We want to cook again. By the weekend, I had a notebook full of names. Not employees, allies. Bakers, cheesemakers, brewers, produce distributors, meat processors. Most have been frozen out of Hearthstone's new model or were fed up with the industry moving towards soulless speed over quality. We weren't angry. We were just done waiting. Then came the first real test. I was chopping carrots for soup when I got a call from the Dane County Farmers Market Association, the largest in the Midwest. "Alan Brooks," the voice said. "You might not remember me. I'm Melinda from the board. We met at a tasting event years ago." "I remember," I said. "You brought those pickled green beans. I stole a whole jar when nobody was looking." She laughed. "Well, we've got a situation. Hearthstone pulled out of our vendor sponsorship deal. They said it no longer aligns with their digital transformation strategy." I felt my jaw tighten. "Let me guess. They wanted you to install branded ordering kiosks and wear Hearthstone-branded aprons. You should have seen the look on some of our vendors' faces." She took a breath. "Look, we need guidance. Not corporate sponsorship. Just real support. We're looking for a consultant. Someone who understands how this stuff used to work." There it was. The first official ask. "Melinda," I said slowly, "you just became the Heritage Culinary Collective's first client." She paused. "Wait, you're serious? That's a real thing." "Registered this morning," I said, smiling. "And now it's got its first contract." We worked out a small monthly retainer. I'd help them redesign their vendor engagement, strengthen their farmer-chef partnerships, and develop a sustainable co-promotion model that didn't require selling their souls to the highest bidder. That night, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat on the back steps, phone in my lap, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Useful. Not as a cog in a machine. Not as a figurehead for someone else's brand. But as a person. A mentor. A builder. I didn't know where this was all going. I had no tenure plan. No team of analysts feeding me projections. But I had one thing Hearthstone no longer did. People who trusted me not because I had an app, but because I showed up at 5 a.m. to unload milk crates in the snow. That was our edge. That was my edge. And I was just getting started. It was a Tuesday. Cold, wet, and gray. The kind of Wisconsin spring day that felt like November hadn't quite let go yet. I was nursing a cup of black coffee at a roadside diner off Highway 18 when Mia slid into the booth across from me, wearing a nondescript hoodie and sunglasses like we were in some kind of undercover movie. She didn't bother with hellos. I had to be careful. "They're watching who I talk to," she said, her voice low. I raised an eyebrow. "You're not exactly subtle." She smirked, then reached into her bag and placed a small USB stick on the table between us. "You're going to want to see this." I stared at it but didn't touch it. "What is it?" "Internal emails. Meeting recordings. Strategy documents. All about you. Your contacts, your supplier list, your habits." She glanced around the diner before leaning in. "They're planning to sue you. They just need an excuse." I felt my jaw tighten. "Sue me for what?" Breathing near a tomato? They want to paint you as hostile. Say you're sabotaging vendor relationships, spreading misinformation, whatever sticks. They're even drafting cease and desist preemptively, just in case you get too visible. I let out a long, steady breath. This wasn't surprising. Hearthstone's new leadership was obsessed with control. And control meant rewriting history. What's on that stick? I asked. Mia sat back. Proof. That they're trying to bury your legacy. That they've replaced your sourcing protocols with mass distribution partnerships, and that they're lying to vendors about it. There's even a slide deck where Amelia refers to your branch as an operational liability. I stared at the USB. It sat there like a loaded weapon. You want me to use this? I asked. She hesitated. I want you to be safe. But if you do decide to go public. I won't, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Why not? Because that's what they want. They want me to look like a bitter ex-employee waving around stolen files. They want a reason to discredit what I'm building. I pushed the USB back across the table. I'm not giving them that. Mia didn't look surprised. Just tired. You're better than me, she said, pocketing it. I torched the place. I thought about it, I admitted. But I'm not in this for revenge. I'm in it for the long haul. A silence settled between us. The clink of forks, the hiss of a fryer in the back. Somewhere near the register, a waitress laughed at something the cook had said. I miss it, she said finally. Not the job. The work. The real stuff. You can still do it, I said. Come with me. I can't. Not yet. I'm trying to hold it together for the kids we trained. They're confused. Scared. Half of them are afraid they'll get blacklisted if they leave. My respect for her deepened. She wasn't just staying to protect herself. She was shielding others. You're a good leader, Mia. She gave a small, sad smile. I learned from one. I picked up the check and waved for the server. As I paid, Mia stood and slid her head back up. Watch your back, she said. They're not done with you. I know, I replied. But I'm not scared of them. We stepped out into the wind. She pulled her sleeves over her fingers, and for a moment, we just stood there in the parking lot, the wind whipping through the trees. Promise me one thing, she said. What's that? Don't let them drag you into their mess. You've got something clean now. Keep it that way. I will. She nodded and turned, walking back to her car. I stood there for a long time after she drove off, the USB stick still untouched on the table of my mind. I could have used it, weaponized it, let the world see just how dirty the corporate machine was. But I didn't, because trust, once broken, doesn't grow back. And I needed mine to be solid, untouched by pettiness, built on integrity. Let them sink themselves. I'd win by staying clean. The first headline popped up in a food industry newsletter I still subscribed to out of habit. Hearthstone Kitchens reports disrupted supply chain amid vendor departures. I sat on my porch that morning with my coffee growing cold in my hands. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched the clouds roll over the rooftops and waited for the other shoe to drop. By the end of the week, it wasn't just supply issues. It was store closures, sudden layoffs, unfulfilled contracts. Farmers markets across 3 states had dropped them. A meat processor I used to work with filed a breach of contract notice. Apparently, Hearthstone failed to meet minimum order requirements after switching to some California-based supplier that overpromised and underdelivered. The ship was taking on water. Amelia Carter, the CEO who'd fired me with a smile and a PowerPoint, went on record blaming growing pains in the company's transformation strategy. She used buzzwords like evolution, systemic pivot, and long-term innovation goals. But the numbers didn't lie. Year-over-year revenue was down 17%. Customer retention had dropped by nearly half. Their digital kiosk experiment in Minneapolis had failed spectacularly when an entire lunch service went down due to a software glitch. Diners waited nearly 45 minutes for lukewarm soup and pre-portioned salads served in recyclable trays that looked like hospital food. The people weren't buying it. Literally. And that's when the call came. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up. Alan Brooks, the voice said. This is Meredith Langston. I sit on the board at Hearthstone. I said nothing for a second, just blinked and stood up, moving to the edge of the porch. What can I do for you, Ms. Langston? She cleared her throat, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the desperation tucked behind every syllable. I'd like to schedule a private meeting. No press, no corporate staff. Just you and me. What for? A conversation, she said. About how we move forward. Possibly together. I let the silence hang long enough to make her uncomfortable. Finally, I said, you do know I'm not interested in fixing your mistakes. I think you might change your mind, she said gently. We're prepared to offer you a leadership role. Regional or national. Full creative autonomy. Double your previous salary. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so utterly predictable. You want me back to fix the mess, I said. No, she replied. We want to rebuild what you had. We realize now, too late, maybe, that your model was the future. We just didn't recognize it at the time. I could almost hear her biting her tongue. It was hard for someone like her to say that, a woman who'd probably spent the last 6 months rubber stamping every initiative Amelia proposed. "You still working with Amelia?" I asked. There was a pause. "She's stepping back. The board's lost confidence. We're exploring options." Translation: she'd been ousted, or was about to be. I turned and stared out at the road. A pickup truck rolled past, a kid waving out the window. I gave a half-hearted wave back. "Listen," she said, her tone softening. "You built something no one else could. People trusted you. They still do. The company needs that back." I sat down on the porch swing, let it creak under me. "You don't want me, Meredith. You want the image of me." "That's not true, isn't it? You had me, and you tossed me out because a spreadsheet said I didn't scale well." "We were wrong," she said quietly. "We see that now." I looked down at the grass between my boots. This was the offer I thought I wanted. The validation. The money. The seat at the big table. But all I felt was tired. "Let me ask you something," I said. "Why now?" She didn't respond immediately. "Because," she said finally, "you're still the only one who understands how to keep this thing alive." I nodded slowly, more to myself than to her. "I appreciate the call, Meredith. I really do." I hung up before she could say anything else, because I already knew my answer. 2 days after Meredith Langston's call, I got the official offer in my inbox. Subject: formal return proposal, Alan Brooks. It was long. Too long. Pages of flattering nonsense about restoring legacy, reinvigorating company culture, and strategic reintegration. Buried somewhere near the bottom, double my old salary, full creative control, and the title Chief of Regional Experience Innovation. What a joke. They weren't offering me a seat at the table. They were offering me a lifeline, because the house I'd built was burning, and they didn't know how to stop the fire. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a pot of coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and stared out the window while it rained. I thought about all the early mornings, the busted coolers, the handshake deals with farmers who didn't need a contract to know their word meant something. I thought about how they discarded that for tablet ordering systems and AI taste optimization. And I thought about what I was building now. The next morning, I typed a response. "Meredith, thank you for the offer. Truly. But I won't be returning to Hearthstone. My time there taught me what matters. And what doesn't. I'm choosing to build something new, without shortcuts, without shareholders, without apologies. All the best. Alan Brooks." I hit send, and I never looked back. A week later, I stood in a converted garage-turned office in Baraboo, Wisconsin. The walls were unfinished, the windows cracked, and the Wi-Fi spotty at best. But the spirit in that room could have powered a city. 5 of us sat around a folding table, a butcher, a bread maker, a cheesemonger, a food truck owner, and me. The original 5. We drafted our first mission statement by hand on printer paper. Heritage Culinary Collective is a member-powered alliance of food artisans, chefs, farmers, and workers committed to real food and real community. No buyouts. No central control. No middlemen. We voted to convert into a full cooperative model. 1 member, 1 vote. There were no VPs. No CEOs. Just us. By the end of that month, we had over 24 provisional members. Cafes that had been pushed out by corporate supply chains. Family-owned butcher shops that refused to freeze their inventory to fit a delivery algorithm. Culinary students tired of being told creativity was inefficient. We helped them pool resources. Shared trucks. Shared marketing. Shared prep spaces. We wrote open-source vendor contracts, hosted workshops on human-centered kitchen design, and offered microgrants from a community fund seeded by everyone who joined. There was no glossy packaging, but it worked. And here's the part no one at Hearthstone ever understood. People don't rally behind a brand. They rally behind a belief. We believed that food didn't have to be automated to be excellent. We believed that craft still mattered. We believed in each other. One night in early spring, I sat outside a community kitchen in Wausau, watching a dozen small operators load up their vans after our first all-member dinner. No suits. No pitches. Just a potluck where everyone brought something they made with their own hands. A guy named Ben, who ran a tamale truck out of Stevens Point, handed me a beer and said, "I thought I was alone in this. But this feels like family." That's when I knew. I didn't want my old job back. I didn't want to fix their broken system. I wanted to build this. Something real. Something that didn't belong to one person, but to all of us. And that's exactly what we were doing. 6 months later, I was standing at the edge of the Dane County Harvest Festival, a local event that used to be a photo op for Hearthstone's PR team. Now, it looked like something else entirely. Kids ran through rows of vendor tents with apple cider sloshing in paper cups. Couples leaned over tables of hand-rolled pasta, wood-fired flatbreads, and local cheeses you couldn't pronounce unless you were from the area. I watched a former Hearthstone pastry chef, the same one they once replaced with frozen croissant dough, serve cinnamon twists with a smile that hadn't been there in years. The banner above the food court read, "Proudly supported by Heritage Culinary Collective." It wasn't just marketing. We had grown. What started as a notebook full of names had become a network spanning the entire state. 38 full-member businesses, nearly double that in supporting partners, farmers, delivery drivers, school lunch coordinators. Even a few municipal governments had reached out, asking if we could help them reconnect their food programs to local sources. Then came the articles. First, a feature in Midwest Living about the quiet culinary resistance brewing in Wisconsin. A week later, Food and Wine called, asking for an interview. Then the New York Times ran a Sunday piece with the headline, "Ex-chef builds independent food network, without corporate chains." They called me a leader in the slow food revival. I laughed out loud when I read that. I didn't feel like a leader. I felt like a guy who just didn't give up. Meanwhile, Hearthstone? Amelia Carter resigned amid a quietly publicized internal audit. Word was the board forced her out after a disastrous fourth quarter and a vendor boycott that spread from the Midwest to parts of the Pacific Northwest. Former suppliers had organized online, tagging each other in stories about unpaid contracts, ignored emails, and ethics violations. The automated kitchen rollout. Scrapped. The AI menu platform they spent millions on, sold off in parts to a logistics startup in Austin. By February, Hearthstone had shuttered 7 locations and was revisiting their operating model. They issued a press release filled with buzzwords like returning to roots and recentering artisanal partnerships. Too little, too late. Someone emailed me the announcement. I didn't respond. That afternoon, I was slicing squash next to a kid named Toby in a shared prep space we'd helped fund through a co-op grant. He'd just opened a food truck using his grandma's curry recipe. He didn't need a corporation. He needed a kitchen, a mentor, and a community that believed in him. And he had all 3. I wiped my hands on a towel, stepped outside, and walked the edge of the festival. No cameras. No press. Just people eating food that felt like it had a soul. Someone tapped my arm. It was Melinda from the Farmers Market Board, the woman who gave us our first real contract. She looked around and smiled. "You did it," she said. I shook my head. We did. Nearby, a little girl bit into a grilled cheese sandwich made with fresh sourdough and herb butter. She grinned, melted cheese on her cheek, and gave a thumbs up to the chef behind the booth. I didn't need an office. Or a title. I had this. A world where the people behind the food mattered just as much as the food itself. Where the work was real, the partnerships honest, and the trust earned, not bought. I stood quietly, hands in my pockets, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air. I didn't burn anything down. I just built something better. And it lasted.